What happens when one of the most famous women on the planet sits down for what should be a light, friendly late-night chat, and within minutes the entire interview combusts on live television? It took 37 seconds. 37 seconds, from the moment one question left the host's mouth for the smile to drain from Meghan Markle's face, for the air in the studio to shift, and for everyone watching to realize this was not going to be a normal interview. This was the moment nobody predicted. The moment the studio froze. The moment security was eventually forced to intervene and a guest was escorted off stage. Here's exactly how it happened word for word, moment by moment. The lights were bright. The band had just finished their cue. Jimmy Kimmel walked out to his desk, waving to the crowd, riding the high of yet another winning week. He was loose, warm, cheerful. Why wouldn't he be? Tonight, he had a headliner. Backstage, Meghan Markle waited, poised and polished, prepping for what was supposed to be an upbeat promo appearance. A new project, pre-approved questions, nothing unpredictable on the rundown. Jimmy settled into his seat, looked into the camera with his trademark grin, and delivered the intro. All right, folks, you know our next guest. She's been a member of the royal family, an actress, and in the headlines more times than I can count. Please welcome Meghan Markle. The audience erupted. People stood. The band played her in. Meghan walked out, glowing elegant cream outfit, perfect posture, perfect smile. She hugged Jimmy with professional warmth and took her seat on the couch. The applause faded. Jimmy leaned forward. It is so great to have you here. How are you doing? I'm wonderful, Meghan said, smooth and controlled. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here in Los Angeles. Los Angeles loves you back, Jimmy replied. Then, shifting to promo mode. So, tell us about this new venture. Meghan lit up. This was the part she came for. She spoke passionately about amplifying women's voices, creating safe spaces, the responsibility of having a platform. The audience applauded politely. Everything was so far exactly as planned. But then Jimmy asked something a little different. Not hostile. Not accusatory. Just real. So, I'm curious, he said. You talk a lot about wanting privacy, which I totally understand, but you're also very public. Interviews? The podcast? The Netflix deal? How do you balance wanting privacy with being in the spotlight? It seems like a tricky line. It was subtle. Barely noticeable. But the shift happened. A flicker in Meghan's expression. Her smile stayed, but it tightened like a curtain being drawn. Well, she said slowly, her voice sharpening at the edges. There's a difference between choosing to share your story on your terms and having it told for you by people who don't know you. Jimmy nodded, still friendly. Of course, I'm just wondering practically how you decide what stays private and what becomes public. Because a lot of your life is out there. 37 seconds. This was the moment. Meghan straightened, defensively. The warmth vanished. I'm not sure I understand what you're asking me, Jimmy. He kept calm. Decades of experience. Just how you make those decisions. What you keep private, what you share. That's all. Meghan's voice cut sharper now. Are you suggesting that I'm being hypocritical? The audience fell silent. People stared at each other, unsure if this was a joke, a bit, a setup. It wasn't. No, not at all, Jimmy said, hands up, voice steady. I'm genuinely curious. It's not a gotcha question, I promise. Because it sounds like a gotcha question, Meghan said. Her voice wasn't just firmer now, it was rising. It sounds like you're trying to paint me as some kind of hypocrite who begs for privacy while also daring to exist in the public eye. And I have to tell you, Jimmy, I am really disappointed you'd go there. Jimmy blinked, actually blinked like the wind had just been knocked out of him. This was not where he thought this conversation was headed. Meghan, I assure you, that wasn't my intention. I'm sorry if it came across that way. Well, it did come across that way, she said, sitting forward. And frankly, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of people questioning my motives. I'm tired of people acting like I don't have the right to tell my own story while also wanting parts of my life to remain private. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. The audience was dead silent. No laughs. No murmurs. Just a stunned, tight stillness as the interview unraveled in real time. Jimmy inhaled slowly, trying to pull things back. "You're absolutely right. They're not mutually exclusive, and I apologize if the question was clumsy. Let's move on to something." "No," Meghan cut him off. "I think we need to address this, because this," she motioned between them, "is exactly what I'm talking about. This constant scrutiny, this constant questioning of every move I make. It's exhausting." "I understand," Jimmy said carefully. "And I really am sorry." "Do you though?" Meghan pressed. "Do you understand what it's like to have every single thing you do picked apart and criticized? Do you understand what it's like to have an entire institution working against you? To be treated as an outsider in your own family?" Jimmy paused, weighing every syllable. "I can't say I understand all of that. But I do know you've been through a lot. And I respect how you've handled it." "Then why ask me a question that feeds the exact narrative the tabloids push?" she demanded. "Why give them ammunition?" "That wasn't my intention," Jimmy repeated. "It was a general question about how public figures manage private lives. I ask everyone something like that. I asked George Clooney the same thing last month." "I'm not George Clooney," Meghan snapped. "I know you're not. I'm just saying it's a standard question." "Well, maybe it shouldn't be." Her voice sharpened again. "Maybe interviewers should think more carefully about the implications of the questions they ask. Words have consequences, Jimmy. The way you frame something matters." A ripple moved through the audience, restless shifting, crossed arms, barely contained tension. The air felt volatile. Jimmy tried once more to de-escalate. "Look," he said softly. "I think we got off on the wrong foot. That's on me. Can we start over? I really do want to hear about your project, and all the great work you're doing." For a moment, a brief, flickering moment, it looked like she might let it go. Her shoulders eased. Her expression softened. And then Jimmy made a mistake. A tiny one. Barely a reflex. He glanced toward his producer just for a second with a look that read, "Is this really happening?" Meghan saw it. "Did you just roll your eyes at me?" "What?" "No. I was just—" "You were just what?" she shot back. "Checking with your producer on how to handle the difficult guest? Making sure you're getting good footage of me having a breakdown?" "Meghan, I promise you, I didn't roll my eyes. I saw it, Jimmy. Don't gaslight me. I've had enough gaslighting in my life to last a lifetime." The word gaslight dropped like a brick. Heavy. Loaded. The entire room stiffened. Jimmy's face changed. For the first time, he looked wounded. "That's not fair," he said quietly. "I have never gaslighted anyone. And I would never do that to you." "Then what was that look?" "I was checking how much time we had left in the segment," Jimmy explained gently. "That's all. I do it in every interview. My producer gives me cues. It has nothing to do with you." "Everything has to do with me," Meghan said bitterly. "I'm the one in this chair. I'm the one being questioned. I'm the one being judged." A long, suffocating pause followed. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Finally, Jimmy spoke again, steady, calm, composed. The professional mask fully back in place. "Meghan," he said, "I am genuinely sorry that you feel attacked. That was never my intention. I have always had a lot of respect for you. All I wanted tonight was to have a nice conversation and let you talk about your new project. That was it." For a fleeting moment, it looked like the storm might break, that Meghan might breathe, regroup, and let the evening right itself. Jimmy's apology had been sincere. His voice was gentle, measured, offering her a clear path back to calm. But instead of taking it, Meghan pivoted hard. "You know what your problem is, Jimmy?" Jimmy's eyebrows lifted, but he said nothing. "Your problem is that you're part of the machine. You're part of the system that chews people up and spits them out. You sit here in your nice suit behind your nice desk asking your nice, sanitized questions, and you think you're one of the good guys, but you're not. You're just another cog in the wheel that destroys people." The audience gasped. Not a dramatic TV gasp, a real one. Pure shock. Jimmy's jaw tightened. Her words hit him hard, but he didn't lose his composure. "I'm sorry you feel that way," he said. "I don't agree with your characterization, but I understand you're upset." "Of course you don't agree," Meghan snapped. "People like you never do. You never see the harm you cause because you're too busy congratulating yourselves on how progressive and enlightened you are. People like me?" Jimmy asked quietly. Meghan didn't hesitate. "The press. The media. The people who've made my life a living nightmare for years. You're all the same." Jimmy shook his head. "Meghan, I have spent my entire career trying to be fair, trying to be kind, trying to give people space to tell their stories. I'm not perfect. No one is. But I try, and I don't think it's fair to lump me in with tabloids and paparazzi." "Fair?" Meghan laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that sent a visible shiver through the room. "You want to lecture me about fair? Nothing about my life has been fair since the day I met Harry. Nothing." "I believe you," Jimmy said softly. "I truly do, and I'm sorry for that." "Stop saying you're sorry," she shot back. "Your apologies mean nothing if you don't actually change your behavior." "My behavior?" Jimmy asked. "I asked you one question. One. That wasn't hostile. It wasn't accusatory. It was a question that anyone might ask anyone who lives a public life. But I'm not anyone, am I?" Meghan said, her voice trembling with furious intensity. "I come with a history. I come with trauma. I come with years of being mistreated by people who were supposed to protect me. So when you ask me a question like that, you're not just asking a question. You're triggering years of pain." Jimmy let the silence sit for a moment, weighing every word. "I hear you," he said gently, "and I'm sorry that my question triggered those feelings, but I can't be held responsible for everything that has happened to you. I can only be responsible for my actions and my intentions. And my intentions were good. The road to hell is paved with good intentions." Meghan fired back. "Maybe," Jimmy said, meeting her eyes. "But it's also paved with people assuming the worst about each other, and right now, you're assuming the worst about me even though I've done nothing but try to be respectful and kind." For the first time, Meghan faltered. It caught her off guard. She had expected him to stay on the defensive. She hadn't expected him to push back. "Are you saying I'm the problem here?" she demanded. "I'm saying we both contributed to this moment," Jimmy said calmly. "I asked a question that upset you, and I apologized for it. But you've spent the last 10 minutes attacking my character, accusing me of being part of some destructive machine, and that isn't fair either." Meghan's eyes narrowed. "So now you're the victim?" "I'm not claiming to be a victim," Jimmy said steadily. "I'm saying this has been a two-way street." "Unbelievable," Meghan muttered, shaking her head as she turned to the audience. "Do you see this? This is exactly how it happens. They provoke you, and then when you react, suddenly you're the bad guy." The audience didn't move. No nods. No murmurs. Just stunned paralysis. Jimmy leaned forward, voice steady as steel. "Meghan, I did not provoke you. I asked a straightforward question, apologized repeatedly, and offered to move on. You're the one escalating this. And now you're trying to turn the audience against me. I'm not going to sit here and let that happen." "Oh, so now you're going to fight back," she said. "Now you're going to show your true colors." "My true colors are the same ones people have seen for 20 years on this show," Jimmy replied. "I like to laugh. I like to talk to interesting people. I'm not out to get you. I'm not part of a conspiracy. I'm just a late-night host who wanted to have a pleasant conversation." Meghan stood. The movement was like a spark to a gas line, sudden, explosive. Everyone in the studio tensed. Jimmy rose too, more cautiously, palms open, trying to steady the air between them. "You know what?" Meghan said, her voice trembling with fury. "I don't have to sit here and take this. Meghan, please let's just... No. I'm done. I'm done being disrespected. I'm done being questioned. I'm done with all of it." She stepped away from the couch, standing squarely under the studio lights, hands on her hips, eyes blazing. Jimmy lifted his hands, calm but firm. "No one is disrespecting you. Please," Jimmy said, hands out in a pacifying gesture. "Let's just sit back down and finish the interview. We can talk about whatever you want. I don't want to talk about anything anymore, not with you." "Okay," Jimmy said gently, "that's your choice. But can we at least end this civilly? For the audience's sake?" "The audience?" Meghan swept her arm toward them with open disdain. "You think I care about the audience right now? You think I care about anything except getting out of this studio, and away from you? A wave of hurt rippled through the crowd. They had come to laugh, to enjoy the show. Now they were being dismissed like collateral damage. Jimmy stepped out from behind his desk, a move so rare the audience murmured. Meghan, look, these people aren't your enemies. They came here because they wanted to see you. They don't deserve to be treated like they're nothing. She turned to him fully. They were only a few feet apart now. Don't you dare lecture me about how to treat people. You have no idea what I've been through, no idea what it's like to live in my reality. You're right, Jimmy said softly. I don't. But I know what it means to be a decent human being. And right now, you're not being one. The words hit the room like a live wire. The audience gasped in unison. No one had ever heard Jimmy Kimmel speak like that. Meghan's cheeks flushed scarlet. How dare you? How dare you talk to me like that? I dare, Jimmy replied, voice steady, because someone needed to say it. You've spent this whole interview attacking me, my crew, even the audience. And why? Because I asked you a question you didn't like? You don't get to decide what's offensive to me. No, he said, I don't. But I do get to decide how I respond when someone is being unreasonable. And you're being unreasonable. I am standing up for myself. She shot back. There's a difference between standing up for yourself and showing up ready for a fight, Jimmy said. You walked onto this stage with a chip on your shoulder. You were waiting for someone to knock it off so you could play the victim. Meghan stepped closer, her voice dropping to a lethal whisper. Take that back. I won't, Jimmy said, unwavering, because it's the truth, and deep down, you know it. Silence swallowed the studio. They stared at each other, Meghan shaking with rage, Jimmy standing his ground. You're going to regret this, she finally hissed. Every word. I don't think I will, Jimmy said softly. Because everything I've said has been true, and sometimes the truth hurts. Meghan let out a sharp, bitter laugh. The truth? You want to talk about the truth? The truth is that you're a bully. You humiliated me on national TV. No, Jimmy said calmly. You came here expecting to be treated like royalty. And when you were treated like a normal guest, you couldn't handle it. You've been surrounded by yes men so long you've forgotten how to have an honest conversation. You think I see enemies everywhere? Meghan spat. I know you do, Jimmy said, but I'm not one of them. I never was. I just refuse to be your punching bag. Offstage, security began drifting closer. The tension had crossed into unstable territory. Meghan noticed them and scoffed. Oh, perfect. Are you going to have me dragged out now? No one is dragging you anywhere, Jimmy said, but I think it's best if we end this here. Fine. I was leaving anyway. She snatched her purse, storming toward the exit. But halfway there, she spun around. What you did tonight, the way you talked to me, this is going to follow you. People are going to see who you really are. Jimmy didn't flinch. I'm okay with that. Because who you saw tonight is who I am. Someone who tried again and again to be kind, to be fair, and finally had to draw a line when that kindness was spit on. You call that kindness? She barked. You insulted me. You accused me of being unreasonable. You told me I wasn't a decent human being. And considering how you've treated everyone on this stage, Jimmy said, I think I was pretty restrained. Unbelievable, she muttered, shaking her head. Just unbelievable. She marched toward the door. The audience watched, stunned, as her heels cracked sharply across the stage. Before she reached the exit, Meghan, Jimmy called. She stopped, but didn't turn. For what it's worth, I really am sorry it went this way. I didn't want this. She was still for several long seconds. Then, in a voice just above a whisper, it doesn't matter what you wanted, it only matters what happened. And she was gone. The studio fell into complete, breathless silence. Jimmy stood alone, staring at the door. No applause. No reaction. Just shock. Finally, he exhaled, walked back to his desk, and sank into his chair like a man carrying the weight of the entire room. He looked into the camera. Well, folks, that was something. A few uneasy laughs fluttered through the crowd, like sparks trying to catch flame. Jimmy inhaled slowly, steadying himself. I want to apologize to all of you, he said, voice low but clear, for what you just witnessed. That is not the show we planned tonight. That is not the interview we expected to have." He paused, choosing the next sentence with care. "I've been doing this job for a long time, and I don't think I've ever experienced anything quite like that." He scanned the room. The audience wasn't angry, just stunned, concerned, maybe even protective. His expression softened. "And I want to say this, because it matters. I meant what I said. I tried to be fair. I tried to be kind. I tried, over and over, to diffuse the situation. But sometimes you have to stand up for yourself, even when it's uncomfortable." The audience began clapping, hesitant at first, then building, rising into a standing ovation. They weren't cheering the conflict, they were cheering the man who'd tried so hard not to let it happen. Jimmy lifted his hand. "I'm not looking for validation," he said gently. "I don't know if I handled everything perfectly. But I know my intentions were good from beginning to end, and I hope that counts for something." He turned to the band. "Cleo, give us something happy. I think we could all use it." The band launched into an upbeat tune. You could feel the tension drain from the room. As the music filled the space, people exhaled, smiled, whispered to each other about what they had just witnessed. The air was lighter now, but it carried a strange afterglow, something historic, something impossible to shake. Jimmy leaned back in his chair, letting the music wash over him. He looked exhausted, hollowed out, but also like a man who had refused to compromise his integrity when it mattered most. The interview was over. The guest was gone. But what happened tonight would echo far beyond these walls. In the control room, producers were already huddled around monitors, reviewing the footage. They knew they had lightning in a bottle, something no script could ever create. Outside, in the parking lot, a black SUV rolled away from the studio. In the backseat, Meghan Markle stared out at the blur of Los Angeles lights. What she was thinking, anger, vindication, regret, no one would ever know. But the silence inside that car was louder than any headline. Back on stage, Jimmy pushed through the rest of the show. Another segment, a few jokes, another guest. The cameras demanded professionalism, and he delivered it. He always did. But when the recording finally ended, the audience gone, the lights dimmed, he sat alone at his desk for a long, still moment. He thought about how quickly an ordinary conversation had detonated. He thought about the words exchanged, the ones he wished he hadn't had to say, and the ones he was certain he had needed to. He thought about the cost of being a host of guiding, unpredictable conversations in front of millions. This was the life he'd chosen, and despite everything, he knew he'd be back in that seat tomorrow, ready to make people laugh again, ready to try again, because that was who he was. A man who believed in connection. A man who believed in conversation. A man who believed in grace, even when grace wasn't returned. The stage was dark now. The chairs were empty. But the echoes of what happened lingered like a pulse in the air. This was the night everything changed. The night no one would forget. The night a single question unraveled into 37 seconds of silence, followed by an explosion felt across the entertainment world. And through it all, one man stood firm. One man held his ground. One man refused to be rewritten as a villain in someone else's story. That man was Jimmy Kimmel. And this was his show. The lights clicked off. The building fell still. And somewhere out in the Los Angeles night, two people went their separate ways, each carrying the weight of words that could never be taken back. The interview was over. But the story had just begun. In living rooms across America, people were already debating it. In newsrooms, headlines were already being drafted. On social media, the clips were already going viral. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone had a version. Everyone thought they knew what happened. But the people who were actually there, the ones who sat in those seats and watched it unfold, knew the truth. They saw a man try to be fair. They saw him apologize again and again. They saw every olive branch he offered get swatted away. And they saw him finally stand up for himself. Not with cruelty. Not with malice. But with a controlled, quiet dignity that roared louder than any shouting ever could. That was the real story. A story of integrity in the face of chaos. A story of a man who refused to let someone else's turmoil become an excuse for disrespect. And at the center of it all, still standing, still composed, still unbroken, was Jimmy Kimmel. The host who kept his cool. The professional who stayed professional. The man who showed the world what grace under fire truly looks like. The stage was dark. The cameras were off. And the night was quiet.